Okay,
is that good?
I'm just going to do a quick intro, or we can do it at the beginning. Okay. Okay. So our keynote is Amanda Berlin. She will have a wellness area in the Montgomery room across the hall. So if you want to see what that is, just go over, hang out, talk, and then she's actually going to be talking about some of the things that she's organized for wellness. So there you go. You want the mic here there?
I can hold. Yeah, I'll just hold it. Okay. Hey, everybody. Are you awake yet? Because you don't really seem like it. Good morning. There you go. I like interactive audiences, so feel free to yell at me or throw. Oh my god.
It didn't even open.
Ha ha ha. Nope, that means I can't drink it.
Well, I'll drink it then. I can't get it open.
I'm not opening it.
Put your mouth on it.
I feel threatened right now. Where's the people in the get wet yellow shirts? All right, just give me. It's warm. So if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's just smeared off ice that's warm and it's terrible, and it just likes to give it to people to torture them.
I thought you weren't allowed to haze people anymore.
Let's go, Berlin.
I'm just gonna sip on it.
We don't have all day.
I'm gonna sip on it. I'm gonna get diabetes from drinking that. All right, so let's get started. Welcome to HackerCon. So if you've seen me speak in the last year, I've been speaking mostly about mental health related things and not really tech anymore. I mean, I still do tech for my day-to-day job, but if you didn't think me talking about mental health in my first presentation was enough, now you get a part two. And I'm doing this for a few reasons. The first reason was the first talk kept on going over my hour allotted time limit material to make a part two. And then I also wanted to give some updates on some of the initiatives that I've started, as well as some of the stuff I've learned over the last almost 2 years now. And to be honest, I never thought this would be ever anything I would be talking about up on stage. I focus mostly on defensive security, and I do consulting currently, so all of my talks were based around that. But now it's something that I work on, I talk about, and I think about on a daily basis, which honestly for me is probably a good thing. Part one, I'm just going to recap. I know not all of you have seen it, so if you want to watch that first, just don't leave. You can close your eyes and ears, I guess, if you don't want to hear the recap. But the first few times I gave this talk, and actually even recently, I've been told a couple times that, wow, you had a lot of really uncomfortable people in the audience, which at first kind of bothered me. Because I like to make people happy, I like to help them, make them learn, whatever. But then I thought about it for a while. I'm like, well, good. I guess there's a lot of hard truths in life, right? And if I'm making you uncomfortable for it's associating with something that's happening in your life, and it makes you kind of reflect on it and do some self-reflection or whatever, that might not be too bad of a thing to happen, right? It's a talk that I gave at just hacker conferences, and it's not something that you would expect to learn when you're there, so maybe it makes more of an impression. And the act of talking about things and communicating shouldn't be uncomfortable, right? That's what we do. We learn about things, we beat them to death, and then we try and figure out how to fix them. I don't get uncomfortable talking about anything, so I'm good. And honestly, if I can help out one person in an entire room of uncomfortable people, I'm just going to keep on doing it because people keep telling me I can speak in front of them. So to recap, in the beginning of part one, I covered some of my personal struggles with anxiety and depression and why I decided to give the talk that I did. I went through some of the medical research that I had done, and I've continued reading up on different theories and research and stuff like that behind mental health in general, and then some more specific cases. One of the research topics I talked about in number 1 was the Savannah IQ interaction hypothesis, and it's really was a big part of the first talk. That hypothesis shows a correlation between intellectuals, so people with higher IQs, and the prevalence of mental health issues and the likeliness to self-medicate when you're in those situations. We see this commonly in our community, myself obviously included. Here's some statistics on mental health, and this is based on all 18 and older Americans. So you see, like on the lower end, we have like 1.1 with schizophrenia, all the way up to 18.1 with anxiety. However, as far as we go, these statistics are more broad, right? This is for all of Americans 18 and over. When you look at that Savannah IQ interaction hypothesis and other studies, like there was one done at Berkeley on PhD students in STEM, they found 42 to 48 people suffered with anxiety and depression compared to the 18.1 and 6.9% that are up here. So in our type of fields, it's definitely more prevalent than, the average Joe. I know this is a whole bunch of statistics. I'm not going to read them all. But there are some pretty interesting ones, and they're taken from places like the World Health Organization, U.S. Preventive Services Task Force, as well as NAMI, which I have a whole bunch of information from if you want to look through it or take any of it. And that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And it really shows the prevalence of mental health issues in our society today. Another cool thing that I hadn't really gotten a chance to put in all of my talks, because I found out about it not too recently, is there's an actual tear expert. So I was talking about coping and how crying can be really cathartic and help you deal with stress and everything, right? Well, there's this is the guy's job. He's a tear expert at the Ramsey Medical Center in Minneapolis. And he found, whoa. Hello. Oh, there we go. All right. He found that reflex tears, so like if you get punched or whatever, are 98% water. But when they are emotional tears, they end up excreting different stress hormones that get released through the body when you start to cry. And he actually studies composition of tears and the fact that it lets those toxins out of your body, and it can actually make you feel better and stimulates the production of endorphins, which are your body like happy pills for your body, right? So crying can make us feel better even when a problem persists. So the first talk I gave, most of them, if you watch any of the recordings, I usually cry at the end of it. And there's a couple times that I just kind of skipped over the slide that I knew would make me cry, because nobody likes to cry. You don't like crying in public. You don't like people seeing you cry. So I'm pretty confident this one won't make me cry, this talk, but I also haven't given it in front of anybody yet, so we'll see how this goes. I also covered some issues and symptoms, more just to get some of the information out there about more of the common mental health issues that are out there. And a couple of the short examples was bipolar disorder, and that's previously known as manic depression. First off, you get the manic part, or mania part, where you're always upbeat, jumpy, wired. You have this exaggerated sense of well-being, and euphoria leads to really poor decision making. You can just go spend your life savings because you think that's a great idea. But then that's the high point, and then you end up crashing, and all the crashing ends up being all of the symptoms of your everyday average depression. Depression is obviously one of the most talked about mental health issues out there. Many people associate it with just being sad, or about one particular issue, or my life sucks, whatever. But it's way more than that. According to WHO, depression is the leading cause of physical illness in the world. You get feelings of sadness, tearfulness, emptiness. You can have body aches. You can feel sick to your stomach. There's a lot of physical manifestations that this kind of stuff takes in when you have it. You have loss of interest in all of the things that once made you happy, sleep disturbances, that kind of stuff. And then this is the one that I talk about probably the most in the other talk, because this is what I struggle with the most. It's social or general anxiety disorder. You have an intense fear of interacting with others and putting yourself up on stage, which I'm not sure still how I'm able to do it, probably because I can't say no to anybody, so I just say yes and then end up in front of the stage in front of a bunch of people. You fear of physical symptoms like blushing, sweating, stammering, stuttering, whatever, and then you avoid doing things like going out in public or going to public bathrooms, eating in public, that kind of stuff. Anything that would potentially put you in, an awkward state. And these more common mental health issues, as well as the majority of them out there, will sometimes sadly end in suicide, which is not something I really did cover in the first talk a whole lot. Even though that is one of the main reasons why I started giving this talk, because there's so many people in InfoSec that have committed suicide. Like I can think off the top of my head, even just this last year, there's at least been 3 or 4 that I've known. And that's a fairly small circle when you think about all of STEM in general, right? And it's always worth pointing out that we're not as alone as we think that we are, and we can really make a huge contribution to everyone around staying alive. This is the description of the semicolon project, or the semicolon meaning behind the semicolon project, which brings awareness to mental health issues worldwide. I already covered some statistics on suicide, which is frankly heartbreaking, but understand a lot of people think about it. It's well over half of the population. So in 2006, which is a while ago, and it's gotten worse, and a little bit more people are talking about it now, there was a study of 2,600 college students that were undergraduate and graduate, showed that over half of them had considered suicide at some point. So sadly, you're definitely the majority if you have. I'm going to take another drink of this terrible stuff. There's a distinct difference in suicidal thoughts, however. There's active suicidal thoughts, and then there's suicidal tendencies and passive thoughts. So an active suicidal thought might be something like, I wish I was dead, so tomorrow I am going to take, all of those pills right there, and then I won't have to worry anymore, I won't be alive. It involves intent. It involves some kind of plan, even if it's a long time from now, maybe it's next month or next year or whatever. It could be a vague plan, but those active suicidal thoughts include the plan. That's what separates them out from the passive. And honestly, that's what people think suicidal thoughts mean for the most part. And they're not wrong exactly, but that's not all of the definition. The other variety looks more like, I'm going to go to sleep and I really hope I don't wake up in the morning. Or, it would be really easy to just jerk my car wheel into that barrier and then it would be great. I wouldn't have to live anymore. But that's what you call passive suicidal. It's just the thought about not being here being nicer than actually being here. Because depression makes the idea of dying more appealing than the idea of continuing to be alive. So while that part on suicide wasn't really a recap, I did cover coping. So I covered a lot of different coping skills in part 1 to deal with anxiety, depression, and any other kind of mental illness that might be out there that are proven steps to actually have to deal with this stuff day to day. And it's worth pointing out that you can't heal in the same environment that you've gotten sick in, right? Same goes for our headspace. In order to grow, you have to change yourself, and that often starts with things like these coping mechanisms that you can keep kind of in your back pocket as this little tool set to help you deal day to day with different problems. When you're anxious or depressed or anything, the last thing you want people to do is tell you to calm down, right? Like, ask anybody that's ever been in a relationship. That's not words that you ever want to utter out of your mouth. And things like anxiety, whatever, it has a lot to do, ties in with a lot of different mental illness problems, right? And the nature of anxiety tends to be kind of future oriented, and the best way to kind of bring yourself back to here and now are doing some of these things in the tool, this toolbox that I had talked about a little bit. So I'll cover just a couple of the ones that I know that are more helpful to me anyways, and I know a lot of other people practice as well. There we go. So I'll cover two of them. The first one is breathing exercises. So if you feel a panic attack coming on or having issues with something, breathing deep, inhaling and exhaling like this for even a couple minutes can be super helpful to just bring yourself back down and kind of ground yourself. And another thing is the 5-4-3-2-1 rule. And this is, both of these are just really super easy to remember, is why they tend to work a lot. All right, so you can acknowledge 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, like the people yelling in the back, 2 things that you can smell, and then the last one can go one of 2 ways, either one positive thing around you or something that you can taste. So take a drink, you get some gum, whatever. Another thing that I covered was how to help others. So if you're not actually dealing with anything, good chances are you know somebody that is, whether you work with them, whether they're in your family, close to you, acquaintance, whatever. Chances are you know somebody, whether you know they're struggling or not. One of the best things that you can do is listen and communicate. I've been saved so many times by using a mental health safe word, which is funny, right? But like you just pick a word, because another thing that I talked about in the first one is like my inability to actually speak when I'm having a panic attack, or like say what's wrong. Like I could probably utter a few words, right? So having people that you trust that know the safe word and know what you need to do to like get help, like take me back to my room, get me away from people, whatever. And we do the same thing with our jobs, right? Anything tech-related design, you're not going to just wing it and hope it works. You're going to want to test your backups, and you're not going to wait until you have an entire network failure to make sure your things work and have a plan for it. You don't want to do the same thing kind of for your mental health. And I also listed a bunch of things like to say and not to say. And it's really hard remembering all the things on that list, but I do have a couple that I like to just memorize to help other people, because even though I talk about this stuff all the time and I research it all the time, when somebody comes up to you and they're like, yeah, man, I've really been thinking about killing myself lately, I have had this plan all put, like all of the thoughts leave my head, I don't know what to say. Like that's super awkward and that's super hard to deal with. So if you have just 1 or 2 things that you know are something good to say right off the bat, at least you're not standing there like deer in headlight. And I was also talking to my friend Phil the other day about some mental health related things. And he said this, and I loved the way that he put it. He told me that he had to step away and reduce his mental attack surface, which is exactly what I was trying to do at the time. Step away from social media, step away from all your screen time if you can. And I go off grid for a few days. Like I will go somewhere in the woods and go camping that doesn't have cell phone service, because interacting with people all the time can just like freak me out. And to kind of come down from that, and then like I said, I also have a hard time saying no to things. It kind of gets me away from all of the million things that I'm in the middle of doing, right? And another thing I've started to do is take on projects without deadlines, or that actually involve a very small amount of time of hours, and ask people when they want me to do something how many hours it's actually going to take out of my time. Because before I would just say, sure, that sounds great, and then I get roped into this giant project that I obviously did not have time for. So now that you that those of you that haven't seen the talk kind of had the gist of it, and those of you that have seen it are significantly bored and falling asleep. I'm going to go on with what I've had going on since then. This year was the first mental health village at Derbycon in Louisville, Kentucky. And because honestly, after giving that previous talk over a dozen times, I thought there was more interest than just like the amount of people that come watch me talk. So I was throwing around in my head like an idea of just kind of a chill space or something that I knew would help me and a couple of the other people that I had talked to kind of get away from the crowds and just chill out, nice and quiet, relaxing music, whatever. And because a thing that I have a problem with, I work from home all the time, right? I have 3 kids, but those are kids, right? I don't really ever have much interaction with adults, other than when I force myself to leave my house, other than when I come to conferences. And then I am surrounded by a crap ton of people 24/7 for a couple days, and then I just get a major anxiety attack because my body's not used to that. So I thought a village like that would be super helpful. I talked to a couple people and decided to put in the CFP, and yay, they accepted it. And after talking to some of the organizers about kind of what I wanted to be involved, they gave me 2 options. They're like, we could ask some of our people that we didn't have room to, for them to sponsor us if they would like to sponsor you, or you could try and do like a crowdfunding thing. So I thought I'll just do the crowdfunding and see how much interest there actually is. And it might give me an idea of what the reception's going to be. And we were able to raise over $7,000. My initial goal was $3,000, and that got blown past in the first 3 donations. So I upped the goal and then started coming up with even better ideas rather than just a chill space, which we'll cover some of the other stuff that we did in a second. Here are some of the statistics we had from the village. I wanted there to be some kind of information given in some form. So I split up all of these ideas that the volunteers had come up with. I'd like this volunteer form that you could come and help out. And I split them up into discussion groups and presentations. So the presentations were like this. You had somebody talking at you. You were looking at slides. You're learning things, whatever. And then like the normal conference type presentation. And then the discussion groups were more like you would have a discussion leader and a small group, and you would go back and forth, right? It would just be very interactive. Everybody's sharing their ideas. The person leading the discussion group might have questions or offering up information, and then the stories would just get shared back and forth. We also had an amazing volunteer offer her yoga services. Like she's in InfoSec, and I'll introduce her in a couple slides. And honestly, getting up at 6 a.m. to go do yoga after I've been to the bar since 2 a.m., I did not enjoy, and I was regretting it every morning. But then after I was done, I realized how much I needed it, and I'm kind of glad that I made myself do it because, it kind of put me into a calmer mental state, having to deal with all the stuff I had to deal with all day long. Saturday, we had a full day of chair massages, and honestly, that's where half of that $7,000 went to, because boy, your massage therapist is really expensive, and especially when you have 4 of them for an entire day. So I wanted to cover also, so we didn't record any of this, and I'll cover why, but going into some of the group discussions and presentations, I learned a lot of really cool stuff that I hadn't known about previously. We learned about different mental health hacks, and the 2 major points that I took away was CBT and scheduling. So CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like a short-term, goal-oriented psychotherapy treatment you can do at home. It's very hands-on. It's a practical approach to problem solving, which honestly, all of us should be great at, because it's kind of what we do. And the goal is to change your patterns of thinking that are behind your difficulties, right? And by doing that, you end up changing the way you feel. I have a really cool CBT workbook. I don't have it out on I might have it out on a table over across the hall. And a lot of the stuff in that CBT workbook and CBT in general focuses around journaling. That's like a very big part of it. And then playing the script to the end is what it's called. Which if you have crippling anxiety, it's kind of, I mean, it's helpful sometimes. But you're kind of just creating this thought experiment where if you're anxious about something, you imagine the outcome, worst case scenario. Like you just play through all of it through your head, and then letting that play out can force you to recognize that even if all of those horrible things that you think are going to happen actually happen, you'll probably still be okay in the end anyways. And then with the scheduling and management of like projects and stuff, I really like the tips that, this is from Brent White and Tim Roberts, they gave in their presentation. The way that they like organize folders in their projects, so that's like their inbox matches, like this just makes me super happy and I need to start doing it. It's just really super helpful and helps reduce stress regarding, you know, especially if you're a consultant. Like this would really help out anybody rather than having like what I normally do. It's new folder 2, new folder 3, new folder 4, and then you just have to search through all of them. They also taught us about different things in time management, like Parkinson's law, which the short gist of that is your work expands to fill your time allotted, and also something that I'm really trying hard to work on because you know, working from home and always being behind my laptop screen and always saying yes to projects, that time I allotted was like 18 hours out of a day when I did not have that, and I also have 3 children and a house and a job and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, it kind of overexerted myself when it comes to projects. And that's a very common thing, especially when you do work from home. And then taking some time to, you know, organize, be your own project manager, just for your own sanity. We learned about emotional intelligence and how important it can be to your day-to-day life. So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize your own emotions, understand what they're telling you, and realize how your emotions affect other people around you. It also involves your perception of others and how they feel, and allows you to kind of align and manage those relationships more effectively. The guy that actually came up with and made, I don't know if he came up with it or just made it kind of more mainstream, was Daniel Goleman. He was an American psychologist, and he indicated that EI actually accounts for 67% of the abilities deemed necessary to lead. And it matters twice as much as IQ. Because, I mean, if any of you have ever conducted interviews, you look for eagerness to learn. You look for how that person will fit in your organization and their personality and, you know, how well they're going to fit in a little more than you actually look for technical expertise. Or you should, I think you should anyways. Because technical expertise can be taught. Being an asshole cannot be untaught usually. So it's super important in the workplace to look at emotional intelligence as well. And he lists 5 key elements to it. There's self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, social skill, and motivation. We also learned about demystifying counseling, which was one of the more well-received talks that we had. A lot of people compliment the speaker on this. And she was going over the common misconceptions for like therapy and counseling. So when you think of therapy, and if you've not been, what are some like things that you think about that might be a common misconception? Anybody want to shout something at me? That you're laying on a couch. That's a good one. Like Freudian, it's all about your mother, that kind of stuff, right? That if you bring up that, you know, or admit that you've been thinking about suicide, they're automatically going to hospitalize you. So she covered that and how all of those are common misconceptions and definitely not based in truth at all. And then she also covered some reality behind counseling. So like, it usually includes goal direction. So you want to go there with a goal, and if you don't, they might help you think about what your goals should be. And you also have to remember the realism of this, and counselors and psychologists are real people just like we are. Like, they're not going to have the answers to everything. You're not going to walk in there and after 2 different sessions be like, yay, I'm cured. It is not how it works. I know people that continually go to therapy once or twice a week for their entire lives because it's kind of just like, it's like a process, right? It's not just a easy fix project that you're going to walk in there and, you know, be healed like a broken bone. So we had presentations, discussion groups, yoga, massage therapy. What else could I add to this to make it more worthwhile? So we had volunteers run small sessions on paracording, like paracord creation, and I have some of that over there and some instructions. Essential oils, we had a therapy dog come visit, which I think she's not in this room yet, but I know she's at the conference. Fava is a little like black and white little puppy dog. She came and visited us. I know I just don't see her in here. But she is here, yeah. And then I set aside different tables. So we had a fidget table, which now after learning my lesson, we'll never have slime again. I should have learned my lesson after Derbycon because it was everywhere, right? And then I'm like, oh, I have 2 little packets left. And I went and gave, I went and did this village in Munich like 2 weeks ago and showed up in Germany and my entire suitcase was covered in slime on the inside. So I was like in this little tiny bathroom with cold water only, washing off all of the crap that I had over on those tables over there, which was fantastic. I also had a coloring and craft table. We had some awesome people donate some beads and things for us to do. And then I also decided on a trial table because there's a lot of different things out there that are really expensive and you don't really want to spend the money on unless you know you're going to like them or you know it's worth it, right? I have a one of those like happy lights for seasonal depression. I have like a big weighted blanket, which has been a huge hit. And that's over there as well. It's kind of like someone's just like wrapping you in a hug. As well as snacks and tea and stuff. That's over there as well. And then these glorious air loungers that were a gigantic hit that look terrible when nobody's sitting on them. And they have to keep being reblown up over and over and over again, but they're super comfortable and fun to sit in. If we have room, I'll probably blow up a couple of them and just like, I don't know, put them wherever. But they're really nice. If you go to buy one online though, they do not work at blowing up like they say they do. They like make it look like you could just like whoosh, like air. That's not how it works. It's impossible. And the best part of all these talks, like I said, was the fact that they weren't recorded. The atmosphere was relaxed enough that people were opening up. So I think one of the most memorable and heartbreaking pieces, if any of you were in there, of the entire endeavor, my friend tells me it's awesome that I made an entire room of grown men cry. So I'm going to add that to my resume. But we heard stories on child abuse, sexual assault, growing up as wards of the state, growing up in cults, and people were openly sharing like some crazy shit that happened to them when they were younger and like not too long ago too, that left them in this super vulnerable state. And they felt comfortable enough to do this because of the atmosphere that we put on. And one person had brought up like these suicidal thoughts that they've been having. They're past the suicidal thoughts, but still, like you think you're crazy and you think you're going to kill yourself. You think you're the only one that's having those thoughts. We had 4 other people. They're like, oh no, I do that all the time. Like, and they just talked back and forth for, you know, a good hour, just, you know, based around that kind of stuff. And that's what we're here for, to let other people in the space know that you aren't alone and to bring broader awareness to the massive amount of people dealing with this stuff. All of that, and now we have our pending 501c3 company, Mental Health Hackers, our little cat guy. So Three things about the image. Green is known for being the color to promote mental health awareness, as well as the butterfly, and then the little semicolon guy on the butterfly. After and during Derby, I had 10 different people that run conferences come up to me, including this one, asking if I could run something similar at theirs. And 3 different vendors asking, how can I throw money at you to fund them, right? They know massage therapists take a crap ton of money, and I'm not going to want to run a GoFundMe every time. So obviously the need was there, and we wanted more. We're prepared to offer 3 different versions of this. Level 1 being the one that we have here. It's just like stuff and information out there for everybody. Up to level 3, which is like what we had at Derby. Talks, discussion groups, massage therapists, the whole 9 yards. And then I'd like to introduce you to our board. So there's me, CEO. And this was great too because we got to come up with some awesome like C-level titles. There's our COO, who's Click. He told me that I could write his bio, which is a terrible, awful amount of trust to give me. Really, his only job is to keep me alive, so he doesn't have to do all the stuff that I've been doing. And he really likes cats. He has 2, Ron and Hermione. Our CWO, who's Susan, she actually was our yoga instructor. And CWO stands for Chief Wellness Officer, which will officially be in our Articles of Incorporation and stuff, which is pretty cool. She does threat intel for Booz Allen Hamilton. And then there's our CSO, which is Chief Serenity Officer, Courtney. She has some amazing experience and is my favorite author of my favorite book ever, which if you don't know, you can ask me later. And then there's our CFO, who is Megan Roddy. She is a senior security analyst at Recon InfoSec and has some amazing information and talks on neurodiversity. She's actually has Asperger's and completely uses that to her advantage, which, like, honestly, our field tends to attract a lot of people on the autism spectrum just because what we do, right? And then there's our CEMO, which is our Chief Emotional Officer. This is Andy Cooper. He actually gave me a bio, so I'll read that. During the day, Andy works to help keep data use honest. At night, he leaves on his glasses and solders blinky wearables and organizes his Python libraries by length. Andy joined this team to help have a place for fellow hackers to go during cons to help them realize others fight the same battles they do. As of November 14th, we're technically a registered nonprofit with the state of Ohio. And like I said, currently working on our 501c3, which if you've never gone through is a gigantic pain in the ass, which will allow us not have to pay federal taxes and make me so I don't go broke. So now what? We're going to need you guys. We're looking for committee members for CFP reviews for cons. Previously, I kind of just accepted everyone. While that worked out great, it probably isn't going to scale so well. And things like volunteer wrangling, scheduling, helping set up, tear down rooms, offer services, whatever. And you can just send an email to this if you're interested in doing all of that. Eventually we'll have a form and we might send out a newsletter or at least tell you when we're going to be at conferences. So if you have any interest in helping, go ahead and send an email to that. And a couple other places where we made ourselves present online. Soon we'll be opening up our Slack to the public as well. We just want to get all the legal stuff out of the way because mostly I just don't need anything else to distract me. We don't have any, as of yesterday, we don't have anything up yet on our website, but I'm currently working with some awesome devs to get that up and running, which our schedule will be on, that kind of stuff. And then I wanted to finish up with some new things, some things that I've learned over those 2 years and some other stuff that we might actually be offering through Mental Health Hackers. This, somebody sent me this on Twitter, I'm pretty sure. It's an actual 8-hour mental health first aid course. So, you know, you have somebody teaching you about a bunch of mental health related things. You're sitting in kind of classroom setting. They're covering topics like depression and mood disorders, anxiety disorder, trauma, psychosis, substance abuse. And then you're actually learning interventions for a lot of that stuff as well. Out of our group, Susan has already taken it. I haven't been able to find one around me that I can actually works with my schedule, but I'll be taking that. You can also become a teacher. Like you can take I think it's a couple-day class to become like somebody that actually gives them, which we're hoping to do as well at these eventually. But you learn interventions for panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, self-injury, hallucinations, like overdosing from drug use, reaction to traumatic events, just a whole bunch of stuff listed in their curriculum. And there's a lot of apps and tech out there related to mental health as well. Somebody had sent me, what was it called? Minder. It's an open source smartwatch app that it monitors the different symptoms of anxiety and panic attacks and will provide you with like medically approved instructions and techniques to help bring you down from that panic attack on the little OLED screen. Like, I kind of want to just run that as like a little workshop within the mental health village to like build your own wearable. I think that would be kind of neat. But when you look on Hackaday for mental health, there's 173 results, which I wouldn't have even thought to look there until somebody sent me that Minder thing. And then there's also Ginger.io, which is an app that's like on-demand mental health help. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank everybody for being supportive throughout this entire thing and the last couple of years. This has blown up in a way that I had never, ever imagined it ever would. I'm really just happy to be able to help people when I can and that need it when they do. And, while I work through my own massive set of neurotic issues. So we're going to keep on going and just look for updates from that Twitter account and on our website and everything, and or mine. I tweet out stuff all the time too. And that's pretty much it. This is me. So thank you guys very much for listening. Does anybody have any questions while I'm still up here? You sure? All right, that's fine. You can catch me. I'll be around all week or weekend, I guess. Thank you. Yay!
Okay. Before we go,